Let's talk about T0, Dungeon Module T0, Journey to Hommlet by Joseph Bloch, which is the real name of Greyhawk Grognard. This is available on his blog for free. This is a fan-made, I guess, prequel to, well, T1, hence the cover similarity, or T1-4. T1 is the Village of Hommlet, T1-4 is Temple of Elemental Evil. I've reviewed T1-4 on the channel. This module exists. It's 18 pages long in PDF, cover and back, that goes down to 16, and a further 2 pages are actually duplicates of the map, but in classic blue line. So there's 14 pages, really, in this module. This is answering the need to, well, it can be used as a lead-in to T1, Village of Hommlet. And this is answering the need, and I talked about this in that review, that T1/T1-4 struggle with, we'd call it low-level areas in Memorpagas, wouldn't we? Like, they struggle with things which low-level characters can engage with and get involved with risk and with danger, but in a way that, particularly if they're newer players, that there's a gentle learning curve, or there is at least a variety of stuff they can do prior to dropping into the temple itself. Because it's perfectly realistic, depending on loot hauls out of T1, out of the moat house in T1, that you could have characters going into the temple without very much in between, based on the hints, what the module itself says, whilst they're still level 1 and struggling even in the ruins, let alone in the depths. And there are hints in T1-4 as a whole that there might be more you could do. Oh, you could do stuff in Nuln, but there's no actual rumours or hooks. And so because I run a Greyhawk campaign based in the area of Verbabonk, of Hommlet, I have added my own content. I've got a couple of dungeons I've made, or dungeon areas. The Workshop of the Gnome Artificers in the Cron Hills, the Norca Ruins, the Elven Ruins inhabited by Norcas out in the Gnarly Forest. And this is a similar kind of thing. So let's just have a look through it. And as I say, free online, you can go and get it, along with some other expansions. He's got an extra level to G1, an extra drow module, a replacement for Queen of the Demonware Pits, or whatever, and T5 as well. T5 Beneath the Temple of Elemental Evil, also published by this author under the fan content policy. So, debuted 2021, which sort of counts as a playtester's call out. The assumption is that you don't start in Hommlet, and he sets up that he's interested in the factional play in the temple. So this is not just an introductory adventure that gives stuff that can come before, potentially before the moat house, but also it feeds into an implicit dynamic, well, explicit dynamic, but with implicit kind of writing about it often in T1-4, which is that the Temple of Elemental Evil, because it tends towards chaotic and certainly towards evil, is not very well organised. People don't get on. There are different factions. The water, air and earth, water, fire and earth temples don't get on particularly. I think that's it, isn't it? And he adds in the fact that, well, you've got stuff where there are typos which still present Lolth, who was Gygax's original big problem at the bottom of the temple, as involved. And he says, I've kept these, and there's a reason why that's relevant. And also he brings in Use, the demigod, who is also involved in it, so that you've got, because that's this weird multi-layered thing already going on. So you have people. Zugdemoy wants to be released. Yuz wants to keep Zugdemoy in check and manipulate everything. Lolth wants to oppose the elder elemental god at all points, keeping the temple divided. And then the leaders of the temple, the 4 temples, air, earth, fire and water, want to win. And this sets up the fact that you've got 3 brigand groups rather than 1. These are 3 outlying outposts of the temple with, who help recruit, get money in and help direct recruits to the temple, humanoids coming up from the Wild Coast or whatever. The Moat House Brigands are working for Romag and the Earth Temple, but their leader Lareth, who's a drow, is secretly actually still working for Lolth. In the Abbey, they're part of the Water Temple faction, and the bandits in the Watchtower are loyal to Hughes, but the second in command is actually loyal to the is it to the Fire Temple? Is it to, I can check later. Yeah, and they're spying on each other. So you've got this thing where you have both Elder Elemental God factions, which don't always like each other represented, but you also have secret Lolth and open Hughes factions, because Hughes is an ally of the Elder Elemental God or whatever. So all these things which aren't going to be immediately relevant here, except unless you very specifically can manipulate one situation, but will feed into stuff that happens and that you can do in the temple. And the conceit of this is that the main mission is that you're escorting a caravan from Narwhal, I think it is, or something like that. Yeah, Narwhal to Hommlet, and you're told you can have 500 GP, and you should try to stop brigands because they're attacking everything going through the Upper Gnarly. And you do a journey, and each day there are potential events. And then it's the caravan, your mission of the caravan will stop. You stop doing the timer of the travel of the caravan when you go off to go and fight some brigands because you've identified them. Traveling with the caravan, there's some very basic details about there's 4 drivers and a merchant. And then we get into, there's a possibility of being helped by a gnarly ranger who is following them. And this is there's a couple of instances of this of very slightly sort of pulling the sides up on the bowling alley, or maybe the opposite, quantum overing sometimes. Something kind of has to happen. This isn't too bad. This is Aaron Fox here, 3rd level ranger. I think this is something where he can come in and help if you need to pull the party out of something. And that should leave us with a kind of mixed reaction, I think. One, actually, if the Gnarly Rangers are going to spot people coming in, which they are, then it makes sense that he might intervene. But why he doesn't intervene to stop the brigands other times, who knows? It's also possibly a defense if it is. With very new players, it might be okay to give them a buffer once. I see that argument, and I've used it, in fact. I've done that. Though not always, not reliably. But yeah, anyway, there's that. Then you get this is the main way the days work. And it says, and it's the way he'll be rewarded, which is also relevant, depending, especially if you count rewards as treasure, which in wilderness contexts, I think you kind of often have to, or city contexts. It depends exactly how you set up loot, but I tend to design with reward as gold XP or magic XP as well. It depends on the adventure I'm running. So yeah, you can see that the first bit's fine. You're going to have to do admin, I guess, if you keep track of food. And then gradually the bandits are more and more likely to scout out and spot them, and then that will affect future rolls, making it higher, which you see can become cumulative. You see, so for instance, the day 2 and day 3 bandit scouts affect day 4 and day 5. Of course, that could only one of them can apply, but that will push the likelihood up from 1 in 3 that there's brigand activity to, well, better than that, to a 50-50. And sorry, yeah, 1 in 3 up to. Is that right? How's my brain gone? This I'm ill. 33% up to 50%, and then that itself can add again because there's then a specific chance, a 6th chance of there being an additional +1, which then leads to the attack. So you could have a +2 going into day 5, meaning that there is functionally a 50% chance of the Abbey brigands attacking. There is a reasonably high chance between all the things that can happen on those 3 days particularly, plus the standalone chance on the 4th day of fighting the Abbey brigands. There's also other stuff: Judge on the Tinker, Pilgrims of St. Cuthbert, finding some corpses, animal or monster encounters. Here is a map. This is actually quite useful anyway. You could probably, even if you don't massively want to use these locations, you could potentially just pull this out and print it anyway, because it's a good way of knowing how well Sabanwich, Narwhal and Hommlet join together, and it gives a decent perspective on Nolb there. But yeah, you've got the Watchtower here and the monastery here in those hexes as they come across. Again, Brigand Scouts, you're now in the Watchtower area from the Abbey area, so you start to get a chance of, increasing chance, because this is quite generous, add one to the next 5 days checks. That's the next 4 days, that's the next 3 days. You can get a highly cumulative chance, and this actually creates a functional certainty of a Watchtower Brigand's attack as well, whereas it's not certain with the Abbey. You keep going, Zavart Band, Goblin Band, and then finally day 11, if you haven't been attacked, you will be attacked, because the probability stacking and or by fiat, it says. Again, that's the Quantum Ogre, that there's some sense that, you know, the point of this adventure is not to bring through the caravan unscathed, but to get the PCs to fight the brigands, and so they need to fight them eventually. And I think that's an uneasy mechanical decision, isn't it? Because either really you should say, much like it's not unreasonable to say, as an inciting incident, the bandits attack on the first night or the second night or something. But when you're opening it up, it's not ideal to then say no secretly. You just have to do this. But yeah, Hillman, Cron Hills Animals, and then you were then in the Moathouse terrain on the last couple of days. Hillman Mining Party. The Moathouse being the original, under Lareth. It's interesting, there are different... basically, Lareth is too good to leave behind serious trails. It's very hard to find the Moathouse via this, whereas the Abbey and the Watchtower Brigands aren't as good, and so you can track them. That's clever. It's clever diegetically, because it makes sense to the world. You know, some people are good at stuff, some people aren't. It also makes sense design-wise, because it is a natural and naturalistic way of giving, and one that is diegetically sensible as well, for the players to engage with and deal with these junior bandits, basically, rather than the fairly tough Moathouse. You then have explanations, and these are good. I like the subtables for the animals and monsters, which I steal quite cheerfully. You can see in the Gnarly Forest, you can meet fairies. You can meet snakes and spiders, and the poisonous snake is a weak poison. The giant spiders are proper poison, but with a bonus save. A large spider, sorry, that is a monstrous compendium entry, which I think you might be taking from 2E. It's very similar to the large spider anyway. Deer, owlbear. Of course, an owlbear with HP 22. I mean, look, if you've got 6 first levels, the owlbear might well take some of them out, but it's one of the joys and glories of AD&D. It's and true for basic too, but one of the joys and glories of AD&D is, particularly first edition, is that you get stuff which, as long as it's not running heavy immunities, like it's not spectral undead or it's not extra planar, you can usually kill it. You can get lucky. You can be brave. You can have enough people that you just do enough damage. There's interesting things that the goblins, because they are lawful, goblins and orcs being lawful, of course, in these early editions, they don't want to go to the temple, and they're just kind of local, incompetent raiders. You kind of feel like there's maybe, and he doesn't push this, but there's possibly a chance there of something else. The hillmen are basically friendly. Jijon the Tinker is a sort of catch-all, can just help them get stuff. Which is not not ideal necessarily. Like it's completely mundane, but it's a fun gimmick because you're allowed to. Well, I say it's not ideal. You're encouraged to think of him. You're told as it can be taken as sure that the statistics above do not accurately reflect the entirety of him. Jijon is a potentially fun insertion in the world of something unusual that they meet early. You have here under Cron Hills, centipedes, dogs, goats, a leprechaun. I mean, they're not amazing, but they are fun. They give a variety of genuinely dangerous things. You know, a pack of wild dogs, or 1d4 plus 1 is not as bad as it could be. I mean, goats, is there a reaction check on those goats to see if they attack you? Maybe a tiny bit more detail on these would be helpful. But the actual demi-human humanoid NPC encounters tend to have good detail, like the mining party of dwarves that are friendly, are lawful good, but are paranoid that you might want to jump their strike. And then stuff about brigands, Verbabonk patrol. Here is actually one that you could potentially get the captain to send you 6 levies and a veteran corporal on your mission. That's really good. That's a nice kind of interaction where you can genuinely, via good role playing, improve your chances of success by getting, you know, a small attack force together. And it can be tough to get players to know exactly what to do with it. I find this in terms of teaching. Some players pick it up, some players don't. But getting hirelings, you know, is obviously, is how Sir Robbelaar solves all his problems, as far as we can tell, in terms of his raids on places like the Tomb of Horrors and the Temple of Elemental Evil. So, you know, there's some sense that you want to say, look, it's easier if the 5 of you actually don't try to be heroic high fantasy adventures alone, but get soldiers too. Pilgrims of St. Cuthbert, who the priest can give you a scroll and can heal you if you protect them, versus an Erinyes of all things, which is haunting them, which is presented as killable. Tough, AC 2, HP 30. Only 1 attack, but it's got fear and it's got produce flame and polymorph, to be fair. So it's got kind of cool weapons and it's got useful spells. But again, you know, you've got the pilgrims might help you, particularly the priest who has remove fear memorized. You might, by that point, of course, have the pilgrims come earlier than the Verbabonk patrol, but you might have set something up to deal with potentially different problems. Wood elves, woodsmen, Zavarts going to the temple. Then we just get 2 location keys, the Abbey and the Watchtower, and I think it took me my second read, and this is partly just my stupidity, but my second read to grasp that you're being told, and it is implicit, so I didn't not get this, but I hadn't seen it said, because I'm stupid, I grant, but that really what happens is the player's going to start investigating. They're going to be attacked, and so they're going to investigate, and I think, and therefore they need, I think there is a comment above, they're going to need to know where the Watchtower is if the Watchtower brigands attack, so a brigand would tell them without needing to be interrogated very much. There'll be tracks and trails. That's relevant to Lareth not leaving tracks, but the other 2 groups leaving tracks. And I think maybe a very, very slight explication of the processes there might be helpful, just a paragraph or 2 extra. There's also a decision here. When I say, I've made other environments and I adapted the small 5e dungeon Lance Rock, actually, from the Richard Baker reboot of Temple, which is an interesting dungeon. It's actually it's quite flavourful, albeit with everything kind of wrong with 5th edition in it. But I did that, and I designed a few of my own dungeons and stole stuff from the video game, which I think was a 3E rule set. Maybe it's 2E, but I remember playing it with the patch. I haven't played it for over a decade. Must do so again. But that it, I like the idea that there's this organic world around them. There are things where they're investigating. Maybe the bandits are at Lance Rock because people have seen that. No, that's just a weird, a necromancer granted power by the other elemental eye, albeit who's got undead. It's not to do with the bandit problem. It does hint to something. That's from Princes of the Apocalypse, or the Declo Grove giant spiders who are forcing the Declo woodsmen out, and they need help. That's a video game one, and that's not connected at all to the temple. and I like the sense that the world has different organic elements, and it's not, and some of the dungeons and places you can go aren't related to the big quest the players presumably are going to end up on. I think a functional sandbox has that. This is very much saying, look, we're going to give them a thing. They might the way in which they connect with the wider world is through the random encounter tables, and then the places they're going to go are connected to the main plot. And you can take that or leave that. Some people will prefer that. It's something that and I'll go through this in a second, but I like these, but it's a limitation to me. I'd really rather, in a sense, not to complain about I think a good free product, but I'm like, oh man, I'd love to have just another idea about something flavourful and Greyhawky to stick nearby that doesn't connect to the temple. So, the Water Temple, they're loyal to Cannonbell Zornig. You can see there's traffic heading in and out, and you've got an encounter key. This is not very big. It is a former Abbey to Elitor, is it Elitor? God of ethics and propriety. And then there's just a few rooms. There is one thing in both this, you can see this one's a short one. It's 13 rooms, and let's just go to the back and look at the map. There's Patreon supporters. Here, yeah, this is the blue line. Yeah, you can see main entrance. It's got guards and stuff. Cells and shrine, and there you've got, that is obviously heading down to that, because that's the ladder, that's the trapdoor, and then and that's is that an outbuilding? Or, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, no, sorry, that is the upper floor here. It's a tower. It's a tower from this. So you can see that it's a quite simple layout with a couple of extra areas, and it's not a bad starting dungeon for that design. It doesn't have, I mean, there's technically a second way in. It's not a very exciting second way in, given those are the options. There is, and there's a door there. So there's a few options, but we're not talking about like, oh man, look at all these crazy loops and how design. What a wonderful experience of mapping. Rather, it's a very small, very simple environment, but one where there's a few ways of solving bits. There's bits to find and explore. That's it. You have plenty of treasure, but with some good starting tricks and traps, I guess. For instance, there are some rolled up tapestries worth 1,000 gold each in the cellar. That's in the downstairs, and thousands of gold in chest 1. Chest 2 has 10,000 silver, but also acid spray, and chest 3 has a slithering tracker in it. The abbot's quarters is, so there you've got the guy is Heavy Snedge, cleric assassin, and he has some magic weapon, magic shield, and he has a bit of treasure. This is these are challenging opponents, but we're not talking about kind of the number of things that will pop up just in the upper works of the moat house, let alone further down. This is meant to be gentler. This is meant to be smaller, more self-contained. You're clearing 13 rooms if you're seeing it that way, rather than 30 or whatever. And there is generous treasure. You're going to be pushing towards, if you loot through this, your thief is leveling up, basically. Assuming that he has chances for training, I guess, which could be a problem in between here and Hommlet. There is a grey ooze, so classic, different, which is one of those things I like in dungeon design, is to have a couple of different types of inhabitants living. It's a Gygaxian impulse, I think, but oh yes, there's, and the moat house is obviously infamous for that. But yeah, I like that. There's a chapel. The altar is untouched, and there is a imprisoned silver dragon wormling who you can free and become friends with. That's fine. He's young silver dragon, small, very young. No, that's good. It's interactable. You can free them. She might help you. She'll leave if she's injured. She's only got 9 HP, or like she's 9 HD, but at minimum HP, which I guess is an artifact of the One-E Dragon model. AC -1 to be fair, but yeah. Will, if you rescue her, send you a chest with 500 PP, 5,000 GP. Again, depends if you're if you're not counting it for gold, you can certainly count it for paying for training and equipment. There's also is not defined here, and so implicit. I think therefore it's not assumed. But you fairly commonly in rescue modules get XP for rescuing things. I.e., you get their XP as your XP, and it's not mentioned here, but that'd be an option as well to reward that. Then there's some slaves you can rescue and you can get paid for, and then there is an order of battle. The OOB is the same for the Watchtower one. The OOBs are not perfect in terms of what you get is, and they echo some other One-E things. Greyhawk Grognard, Joseph Bloch has learned his trade well. The star, but you get a mention where you might have them in one place or you might have them in another, and then you get a list which you mark off. That of course is very much a T1 thing as well, and in other modules too, and including saying how long it will take to replace them from the temple or wherever else. But the best OOB is one which actually says, kind of also defines in one place where people are likely to be, and it kind of does here. But what I mean is in the tabular format, something like that. That's the platonic OOB, and yeah, that's the tower, which has a spotter. And it has a spider above it, and there's Cloak of Elvenkind, so there's quite valuable in terms of XP, quite valuable, because I think it's 1000 XP if kept, cloak there, which is very good, obviously. Then you have the Watchtower, which is, that's always been a temple watchtower. You get an early OOB here and here for those people living in the barracks, for humans and humanoids, gnolls, varts, and bugbears. Here, the leader of this is loyal to Use, but her second in command is loyal to one of the temples, and so there was a tension there. And yeah, you've got Garoff here. It says what he'll do. He's secretly working for the Fire Temple and has convinced a third of the bandits to join his position. Erin knows this. It's not clear how you're going to activate this or lever this. It's not unreasonable. It's not leading anyone by the nose to be like, no, let's say he would be amenable to this kind of offer, or this is the sort of opportunity he'd take if Erin and her loyalists are struggling. Garoff may make a deal. That's reasonable, I think, to add without leading a DM by the nose. But yeah, that's not defined. But there's something there you could activate. Yeah. This is a bit bigger. You can see it's 15 rooms rather than 13. Plenty of stuff here. Statue of Clangdon worth 1,000. Ceremonial shield bearing the arms of Valuna worth 400. And yeah, a fox kit worth 300. Individual specific treasure, which is good and inspiring. And there is also a separate thing actually where you're told Erin will try to escape via a swinging, like a secret door, I guess, functionally. It's a very slightly vague description, but like she'll activate something, and because I think it's on the ground level, her room, she'll just presumably go out. But yeah, there's also the basement is parallel to there's slaves and a cool silver dragon here. There is Selene, 4th level magic user, and she will give you a wand to anyone who sees her safely home. And then there's a merchant and a drover, and they will pay you. Well, you'll be paid by the merchant to go home. They don't know how to get through the secret door next to them, And then you're told, and we'll look quickly actually at the Watchtower map. So here, you can say here, there is a verticality to this. This is connecting to underneath that stair. So you've got the basement goes down, and you can see secret with the secret rooms and a secret escape. And then that is the leader's secret jump out of a window kind of. It's not the ground floor actually, but yeah, pretty much jump out of a window thing. That doesn't seem completely clear to me. I didn't completely understand that, but yeah, there's this is fine. It's a different, it's intentionally a different kind of shape and puzzle to the Abbey, which is slightly smaller. The Abbey is very flat, very horizontal, with 2 little extra areas, but 10 rooms on 1 floor, and there's a couple of ways to sneak around. Technically, but that you're going to have to either take out a guard silently to get in there, or barrel your way in and fight through. Here, and this is something that has the grey ooze and this has the giant spider. Neither of them has the sort of weird, eerie upper works of the moat house, with particularly with the frogs outside, but also with weird stuff inside that you could theoretically somewhat get around without fully alerting the bad guys. In these two, they're small enough and focused enough that you're likely getting into a base assault fairly quickly. You have options, ring of invisibility, someone in. You don't have a ring of invisibility obviously at this point, but you get the idea. You get my point. This is different because rather than it being that flat single level where you're looking at options round and about it, and maybe you can sneak in one way or take out a guard one way. Here, verticality is an option to a limited degree, potentially, because there are arrow slits and stuff. That's a struggle because of trying to get in, so you may be restricted in your options, but then there's still issues in both of finding the treasure. Here it's going to be fighting up and down the stairs, capturing the leader before she escapes or whatever. So there's a bit of variety. It's clever. Finally, you do get a mention at the very end of other areas nearby, because they're in the same hexes. Canriel and Oakvane, which are from the Ashes locations, basically. Oakvane is like a secret elven village that you're not going to find, and so it's less interesting, frankly. Canriel is a weird well which can heal you, but could also make you fade away into the Fey realm. That's a clever one to put on there, albeit it's because I don't think it's a fan content point, and I understand this. You're being pointed to another product to find out about it. This is the thing. This is towards where I'm not thinking, why not have something else? Why not be like, what else can they interact with in the area to develop the area? How much do they need to just go and get from the Ashes to actually get anywhere with this setting? And I think that's the limitation I'd offer, is that this is super focused, because of the chance you're going to meet and engage with many NPCs in Gnarly Forest particularly, which is where most of the NPCs are, is limited. And I think you'd be within your rights, I think, to be like, looking at this thinking, so this is just giving you 2 extra ways to find out about the temple. And that is what it is. I think this is an important addition, I think, into what people can do with their T1-4 campaigns, but it's not a complete response. It is not the whole, this is the missing gazetteer, B2 style gazetteer, if nothing else, to T1. This is not the expansion of Nolb in and the upper ruins, which in T2, which particularly Nolb is much needed. This is just a way of giving more brigands to fight and players a chance to learn how to engage with D&D in slightly hard. I mean, giant spiders, grey oozes, 3rd level assassins, but in slightly more constrained and simplified circumstances. So I recommend it, not just because it's free. I mean, I think if this was worth a bit of money, like a few dollars on DM's Guild, if you're allowed to make content for good editions of the game, I'd say it was worth that. But go ahead and check it out and tell me what you think in the comments. If you have run T1-4, tell me what you did with that kind of arguable need for a bit of expansion around the lower level areas in the comments. Till now, next time.